Yeah,
Thanks.
thanks. Thank you, Deval.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Wow, these are bright lights. It's hard to see everyone in the audience, but
That's good because they probably haven't fully recovered from the party last night. I'm guessing.
we're so pleased to be here this morning, and I'm particularly honored to share the stage with Governor Patrick this morning. It's been an exciting week for those of us who work in impact investing. Will already mentioned in his welcome that the Business Roundtable, over 200 CEOs, came together on Monday to talk about really stepping away from shareholder primacy and really thinking about all of the very important stakeholders in the work of investing in companies. And so this morning, we're here to talk about impact at scale and impact investing. There are more than 2,000 of you gathered for this week's conference, and so far you've talked about topics as wide-ranging as human side of big data, quantum computing. But I want to start our conversation this morning talking about why technology is not the answer to all of the problems that we face today in the economy. How do you believe that impact investing will help solve some of our big systematic and systemic challenges in today's economy?
Wow, there are a lot of questions in that question. Well, first of all, I think as someone who has worked in business, in government, in not-for-profits, one of the observations from that range of experience has been for me that business has done what it's done, and then government and not-for-profits have been around to kind of pick up the pieces. And I think the challenges facing us as humankind are of such scale and complexity that we really need everybody doing what they can to contribute to solutions. So I'm not one of the people who thinks that impact investing, and I will define what we mean by that in just a second, is the answer, or frankly, that private enterprise is the answer. But I think all sectors and all of us have to be part of how we make a livable and more just world. What we do is try to identify companies, not startups, so we're a later stage investor, where there is a mission-oriented entrepreneur who is looking to scale and needs capital to do that and wants a like-minded partner to help them do so. And we are underwriting to the same standards as the large cap funded Bain Capital. So it's a competitive private equity rate of return and measurable impact in 3 areas, which we describe as health and wellness, sustainability, and education and workforce development. And I come to that, and it sort of brings me to where you started with the statement from the Business Roundtable, that to me, especially at a time of ubiquitous information, it's not really possible to manage to a financial bottom line alone. Because frankly, if you mess up, on the planet or people, those bottom lines will come around to bite your financial bottom line today. It's not a big step from there, in my mind, to impact investing, which is about being intentional about those other bottom lines. So if you really believe in long-term value, I think you have to think about all the stakeholders. And that's, I think, the significance of what we heard from the Business Roundtable. What they do is another story, and how they do it, particularly in public settings with the pressure to report quarterly financial results, remains to be seen.
Yeah. So I'm going to follow up a little bit here, because I think it's easy for us to say, well, all stakeholders are important. But in impact investing, which to me is a shorthand way of talking about outcomes, about short-term, medium-term, long-term outcomes, what are the real outcomes that we should be seeking through investment, right? Because investment is just one tool, but arguably a very critical tool to the economy. And so what outcomes should we be seeking in a world where Sao Paulo looks like night
Right.
during the day,
Right.
right? Where Greenland is at risk of sinking,
Yes.
right? What are the outcomes that we should be seeking through investment as a tool and as a vehicle?
So I think the question is important and impossible for me to answer. And I'll just say, from a practical perspective, because the outcomes that you alluded to in terms of how the climate is changing and the risk to humankind, over what used to be the long term and now is more and more
Right.
the medium term, that is absolutely critical. So is chronic poverty. So is a lack of access to affordable and high quality health care. By the way, I'm not leaving out the fact that all of this is interconnected. But one of the things I found when we were trying to figure out what we wanted this new fund to be, this is the first new business at Bain Capital in a dozen years. And so, we were writing on a blank sheet of paper and trying to sort out where the white space was for the kind of capabilities that the firm had and where my own interests lay. We did not, and I didn't want to focus on just one kind of impact. And when we were out, but we did narrow, I mean, even within those broad thematic verticals I described, there's some things we left out that are very meaningful. We did find that there were investors, some of whom said, my thing is climate change, and I just want to invest in that. Or others said, my thing is impact in a certain region of the country, and we just want to invest for that. You can't say that doesn't count. That's important. You want to encourage the kind of long-term thinking that those investors bring to those issues. So I'm careful about implying that our choices represent values choices among what is and is not worthy impact. What I want to do is demonstrate at scale that you don't have to trade, you may choose to, but you don't have to trade return for impact. And I think as we do that at scale, it raises some very important questions that regular way investors can't avoid about the full consequences of the investment decisions that they and we make.
And when we talk about impact at scale, what do you think that it looks like when we succeed, right? What is true impact at scale? Both of those words are I think they can be quite fuzzy words,
They
right?
are.
Impact, scale.
Purposefully, right?
Yeah. Sometimes I think quite intentionally.
Yeah, I think at scale, so there again, back to the point that there are different audiences that we're trying to reach. There are obviously our LPs, but there's the wider audience of private equity, of venture capital, and how they think about what success looks like. I think more and more, by the way, there are decisions that we as consumers, as citizens, are making about how we live and what we eat and what we wear and where it comes from and so on. All of that is creating markets, and that's driving entrepreneurs to create companies that are responsive to those markets. And what we're trying to show is that there is value from a strictly kind of financial perspective, even. That is not our objective solely or even mainly, but we're trying to show that it's a false trade to say that you can't invest in companies that are actually trying to make our world better and trade off your return. In fact, there may be a premium to be harvested for investing in those kinds of companies. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. In our health and wellness vertical, we were very interested in pediatric oral hygiene. Lots and lots of studies that show that overall health and wellness, and actually even academic outcomes, can be affected by poor pediatric health care. And I learned a lot about this in my old job during the recession. We were having to make all these cuts, and we were getting into the question about health care for poor people and where the cuts